Hey y'all, it's Thomas Hendricks with Corona 24 in New York City, and today we are sitting down with Jose Alvarez. Jose is many things: father, husband, surfer, traveler, and co-founder of Abbott, a fragrance company based here in New York that sources from and gives back to environments around the world. Jose, thanks so much for having us at your home here in Brooklyn.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Really excited to talk to you about watches and anything else.
We often start with a wrist check in these kind of videos. I want to do that, and I want to do a little fragrance check as well, because you smell amazing.
Perfect.
What are we working with both on the wrist and on the body?
So on my wrist, I have a Heuer 2547 Dado. It's a chronograph. This watch was given to me by my wife on our wedding day, so it's very dear to me, which is why I'm wearing it. And on my skin, I am wearing two scents actually. I'm wearing our Crescent Beach, which is inspired by Crescent Beach in Long Island off the coast of Shelter Island. It's a very fresh floral fragrance, very clean, great for the warmer months. And I'm layering it with our Sequoia, which is inspired by Sequoia National Redwood Forest in California. Just imagine a very woody, kind of smoky scent. When you mix them, it makes this beautiful, smoky, floral fragrance that I love to kind of wear on special occasions.
Yeah, that's a pro move. What's your thought process getting up in the day as far as what watch you choose and what fragrance you choose to put on?
You know, scents have a lot of ingredients and notes that do alter your mood. Sometimes in the winter, it's very cold and depressing. I haven't seen the sun for a couple months here in New York. I'll put on a citrus scent, which is known to be energizing and revitalizing and kind of makes you uplifting. If I'm looking to kind of relax, if I'm wired, I'll be putting on a softer floral scent like our Crescent Beach. And then also for, you know, nights out, I'll wear something more sexy, smoky. A wedding also fits in the summer. I'll wear something more fresh and kind of green. And so it really depends on the event. And the same thing goes for my watches. I mean, I have some that I wear the most, like every day, which will be this watch here. Yep. I love wearing the Submariner kind of on a daily basis, just because it's an easy watch to wear. It has the date on there. But other than that, I try to wear each one, you know, sporadically throughout different time periods. When I start wearing a watch, I'll kind of stick to it for a couple months. I like, you know, it's the same reason why I buy vintage watches, since they're worn and they have kind of a history. I love the idea of that they become part of me, and I scratch them and I live with them, and they become part of, you know, I put characteristics on them and they put their characteristics on me as well. And I always dream about kind of leaving a couple watches for my children as well, and kind of they get that lived in feeling from me. So that's kind of the way I go about it.
And one thing I notice about your collection specifically is that everything has such a character to it, such a nice aging to it. You can tell that these watches have lived a full life already, and that is carrying on in your life as well. I do want to talk about the Heuer here because it's a wedding gift from your wife. I feel like most people in that situation, they might look up like top 10 gifts for a husband or something like that. Yeah. And if it is a watch, it might be like a Master or a Datejust or something like that. This is very off the beaten path. How did this come about?
So my first foray into vintage watches was with Tudor Big Block.
Yep.
I absolutely love that watch. You know, I love vintage Daytonas. They're a little bit out of my price range. So I went with the Tudor Big Block, and unfortunately after a year having that watch, my apartment got broken into and they obviously stole that. So if you look at my collection, I have a lot of different types of watches. What I do not have is a chrono. I was really wanting a chrono in my collection, so I gave my wife kind of a little bit of an overview, and I told her if you can get me a Heuer and a chrono, that would be great. She really loved the colors on the bezel with the different calendar dates and the crescent moon, which tells you the red crescent moon. So, I love the colors as well. It's a lot going on, but very simple and elegant at the same time.
Of everything we have here, what came first?
So, I've been collecting watches now since 2008. A lot of these watches today, I don't know if I would be able to afford them.
It's a different world, yeah.
It's a different world. I think the first watch that I had over here was this Rolex Submariner. This is
one of your everydays, you said.
One of my everyday watches. This is the first Submariner reference that has the Cyclops date on there.
Yeah, 1680, right?
1680. I just kind of am enamored by the idea of tool watches. I love the idea of having a different watch for a different kind of activity. As you mentioned, I'm a big surfer, which means I love the ocean. I love to dive, and I love the history of the Submariner. I love the history of the military with it as well. So that was kind of the first watch I purchased after the big block.
Yep. And speaking of surfing, do you take any watches surfing? These are all very much in the vintage category.
No, I would not. Unfortunately, I don't think any of these watches would do well underwater or in water for a long period of time.
Getting beat up by waves, and it's not a...
But part of the thing about surfing is I'm in the water and I'm not thinking about anything else, and time kind of stops running. I could be in the water for 10 minutes and I don't know if it's 10 minutes or an hour. I could be in the water for 2 hours and it feels like I've been there for 10 minutes. So I really make an effort to kind of not try to bring a watch with me.
Truly disconnect.
It's the only time I can disconnect and where my mind is just focused on what's going on around me.
And of course, the Rolex is not the only Submariner on the table. What can you tell us about these two Tudor subs that you have here?
And I kind of really loved how the cases are all made by Rolex, but obviously the movements are not in-house. And as you see with all my watches, they're all kind of unpolished, very lived in. So I love that gold bezel. I'm very much into chapter, gilt dials. It's got the big lollipop kind of hand on there as well. And it's also got that rose, before Tudor changed its logo from a shield. It's Tudor rose, which obviously throwback to the House of Tudor.
Yeah, so different areas of Tudor. The Mercedes hand and the rose logo, and then over here we have the snowflake and the classic shield. How did this one come about? What do you like about it?
I'm a big collector in a lot of things. I love military kind of old stuff. I collect old military cigarette cases as well. So I love, the history that these watches have that were made specifically for different kind of military arms. As you probably know, the snowflake dial was also made for the Marine Nationale in France, and I love that story with having this snowflake Tudor. That's kind of like a military reference.
Yeah, a watch that has certainly lived a full life, let's say.
Yes.
And I've never heard of military cigarette cases, but you're going to send me down a whole rabbit hole. I know what I'm doing as soon as this shoot ends.
It's kind of, with vintage watches, it's interesting. Not everyone knows about them. If you have a metal bracelet, I think it gets more attention, and I kind of like having the leather bracelet on because only people that really know about vintage watches will kind of take a second to glance at it and will know what's going on.
Yeah, speaking of, and if you know, flying under the radar, one of my favorite vintage Rolexes of all time is the 1016, which we have here. I mean, talk about beauty and simplicity. This is, I would think, probably the paramount example of that, at least in the Rolex catalog. How did this one come into your life, and how does it kind of fit into your life now?
Again, I was enamored by the whole idea and history of the different tool watches that Rolex made. So obviously the Explorer made to kind of go up Mount Everest, up the Himalayas. I just really fell in love with that story. This watch I love the simplicity of it. I love how easy it is to wear. It's very elegant, like you said. Even though it's like a tool watch, a lot of these tool watches can be seen as more sporty or casual. Similar to you, that it's one of my favorites. I wear this one a lot.
And we have none other than a 1675 here. I think what a lot of people would say is the quintessential Rolex GMT.
I love wearing this watch when I travel. I'm able to have 2 different time zones on there. And when I was looking for a GMT, I really wanted the Pepsi-Cola bezel. I wanted a bezel that was, you know, a bit faded. If you look at the Submariner, the Tudor Submariner, I kind of really like that faded look. You know, the history of a pilot wearing that and just getting beat up from the sun is so cool to me. And again, I have a thing for chapter ring gilts, so I kind of was looking and on the hunt for that when I found this watch. It's a lot lighter than like the modern GMTs, a lot smaller. I feel like it's, again, more elegant, less kind of bulky. I just love this watch as well.
We also have an Omega Seamaster 300 on the table with, you know, chunkier case, some military history. What can you tell me about this watch?
Before I moved to Brooklyn, I lived in the West Village, and there was a collector there named Graham Fowler. He's also big in military watches. He had this Seamaster, and I love dive watches. You know, everyone was getting the Speedmaster at that time when I first looked into this watch. And I just love that it still has the Bakelite bezel on there, which is kind of very hard to find. You know, they crumble after very short periods of time. And I love how, you know, the gasket works too with pressure. No water comes in. You don't twist this one shut. So, you know, I love the kind of like the simplicity of it as well. All things that I just kind of think it's such a beautiful kind of timepiece.
I know from working previously on the sales side of 2024, a lot of our clients are business owners themselves. You, of course, took the leap from Wall Street to starting your own business. What kind of lessons have you learned along the way, and what advice would you give to those who are thinking about starting their own venture?
I think the most difficult thing about being an entrepreneur is figuring out, you know, what to do every day, especially if you come from a corporate world where the job is kind of put out to you, and if I do this and this and this, I'll get promoted and I'll get a raise. Being an entrepreneur is like you make your own job every single day. But if you like that, it's the most beautiful kind of rewarding experience. You have the flexibility to do what you want. You get to call the shots on what you want to do. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, but definitely am passionate about fragrances. So it's been what's helped me.
I think if I had to pick one watch on the table, I'd probably choose this GMT, use it to travel back to 2008, and then get all the watches, other watches that we have here. Jose, thank you so much for having us here in your home. Thanks for showing us your incredible watch collection. Where can people find out more about Abbott?
So we're sold online, abbottnyc.com. You can find us in over 200 Sephoras across the country as well. We're also sold at Credo, which is a clean beauty retailer. And check us out on Instagram. Yeah, I think you'll like what you see.
That's Jose Alvarez. I'm Thomas Hendricks. Thanks for watching another Corona 24 video. We'll have more coming to the channel all the time. And as always, enjoy your watches.